What's going on, New York Giants fans? This is Dialing It Down with Dave. First video. What we're going to do in these videos is we're basically going to go over each time a rumor that is out there about the New York Giants, something interesting that could happen or that is being talked about, and my take on if I think it would be a good idea, and also on if it will happen, the likelihood of it happening, and then obviously comments and below, and I'm definitely hoping that we can get some discussion going on there. So the first one I'm going to do today is the rumor about Matthew Stafford. So we know that Matthew Stafford is probably leaving Detroit. They fired their coach, Matt Patricia. They have an interim head coach right now, but he has a long shot of being the head coach next year. They're most likely just tearing it down. They're going to get a new head coach. I think they're going to get a new GM as well, and they're going to start from scratch. They're going to start over, and they're probably going to want to get their quarterback and move on from Matthew Stafford. So Matthew Stafford is going to be traded next year by the Detroit Lions, but the rumor is, should the New York Giants trade for him? And quickly on Matthew Stafford, he definitely has underachieved in his career. He's only been in the playoffs 3 times and 3 playoff losses. Back in 2018, he was outplayed by Sam Bradford, and he's not that good of a quarterback right now. He threw for 4 interceptions that game. But Matthew Stafford is not a bad quarterback. He has a strong arm. He has a ton of fourth quarter comebacks, reminiscent of Eli Manning. I believe he has 26 fourth quarter comebacks right now in his career, which is really an amazing feat. Now, he has a lot of good stats, and people try to say the stats don't mean anything. I agree that stats we can rely on too much, but I think that stats show just how well you are as a quarterback as well. There's got to be a balance, and a lot of people also like to try to attribute him playing well and having those high stats in his early career to Calvin Johnson, a great receiver that he had on his team. But Matthew Stafford did well without Calvin Johnson as well. In 2016, after Calvin Johnson retired, Matthew Stafford threw for 4,377 yards. He was a 65 completion percentage, which is good. That's accurate. And 24 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. He also did that similarly in 2017 with 4,446 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, still just 10 interceptions, and a 65.7 completion percentage. So I believe that Matthew Stafford is a good quarterback who has underachieved. And I think part of the problem is he's been in a bad organization that's toxic, that doesn't have a good culture, and he hasn't really gotten a lot of help in Detroit. Also hasn't had good coaching. So would I like to see Matthew Stafford in a New York Giants uniform? Yes, I would. I think that he would do well. I think the New York Giants are well coached with Joe Judge as their head coach. No-nonsense guy. I think that Dave Gettleman has done a pretty darn good job with this team. He's made some mistakes, but not every GM is going to get it right all the time. I mean, they're not going to... I can't think of, and I would challenge somebody to name me one GM that has gotten it right 100% of the time. That every single player he's gotten in free agency and in the draft has worked out. It's not going to happen, and it hasn't happened, and so. But if you're grading Dave Gettleman, he's done a good job overall with this team, which is why right now our defense is doing really well. Everybody was all on him about the Leonard Williams trade, and this guy is a beast, creating tons of pressure and getting sacks. Sacks are not everything. Pressure is important as well, because then you can make the quarterback make a bad decision, and Leonard Williams is great at that. So that's just one example of, Dave Gettleman doing a good job. So I think that Matthew Stafford would thrive better on the New York Giants than he would on the Lions. We have a good culture we're building, so he wouldn't be in a toxic culture. He'd have a good coach and a good GM that I believe would continue to add talent around him. He's already got Darius Slayton. He'd already have a good offensive line. Darius Slayton as his number 2 receiver. Sterling Shepard in the slot is good. And we just add him a number 1 receiver, maybe in free agency or the draft, and then he's got, talent around him. The thing, though, the reality is, if we were to trade for Matthew Stafford, we would be moving on from Daniel Jones. I mean, that's just the reality. In that scenario, what we would be doing would be trading for Matthew Stafford, probably a first-round pick of this year. And saying that we're done with Daniel Jones. Now, if we did that and we traded for him, I think it would work out. I think Matthew Stafford would have a few more good years in him to play for the New York Giants. You got to remember that quarterbacks are playing into their late 30s and early 40s now. So Matthew Stafford could be on this team for a while, and that would give this team a chance to draft a quarterback next year or the year after that, and do like Green Bay did, where they drafted a quarterback behind Aaron Rodgers right now, but he's not going to play right away. And I do think that it would give us a good chance to win. I think he would be successful. If you look at Jason Garrett's type of offense, the air raid offense, I think that Matthew Stafford, who's a gunslinger and who has a great arm, would relish in that kind of a system. So originally when I was making this video, I thought my end analysis is going to be that I don't think we should do it, but I'm talking myself into trading for Matthew Stafford more and more through this video. So if somebody can talk me out of it, I don't know. I like it. I like the idea. I actually hope it does happen. I'm kind of over Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is too inconsistent. And even though Matthew Stafford has underachieved, he's been pretty consistent each year of his career, throwing for a lot of yards and not throwing for a lot of touchdowns each year. I don't think Daniel Jones is going to work out in New York, personally. I look at even this year when he finally started to stop turning the ball over. He wasn't throwing that well. He just wasn't turning the ball over. Our defense was winning games. It wasn't Daniel Jones and his throwing ability. So that's my take. I would love to see the New York Giants trade for Matthew Stafford, probably give up a first-round pick for him. Might have to give up more. I haven't really looked into the metrics of what possibly would need to happen for that trade to happen, but I would love to see him do it. I think it would be a good idea. And, we lose a first-round pick this year. We can't build. We lose an ability to not be able to build as much as we would want around Matthew Stafford, but we could still look in free agency for a good quarterback, a good receiver, kind of do like the Bills did maybe with Stephon Diggs, though they did trade for him, so I don't know how that would work out. But yeah, and part of me thinks Matthew Stafford would do better even with the team that is comprised right now, except I do not like Evan Ingram. He's too inconsistent. We need a more consistent tight end and a tight end that can block and stuff. But do I think it will happen is the next question, and the answer is I do not believe it will happen. Typically, I don't believe that teams move on from young quarterbacks. The only chance that I think this happens is Joe Judge. Because what I believe is that if you look at the NFL and what usually happens with these young quarterbacks, if a team moves on from a young quarterback that they've drafted, such as Arizona with Josh Rosen is the first name that comes to my head. I can't really think of anybody else right now. But if a team usually moves on from their, or even look at Chicago with Mitch Trubisky, they're still giving him chances. I think that usually when a team moves on from a quarterback, they've changed coaches. They usually give young quarterbacks a few years, 3 years. I think the third year you usually kind of figure out what kind of quarterback you have. So Daniel Jones has another year, in a sense, to audition for New York. So I think that's most likely what's going to happen. What's most likely to happen is New York will stay with Daniel Jones and give him another year. And if they move on from Daniel Jones, it'll be after next year. The only way I think I see us moving on from Daniel Jones sooner is one of two scenarios. One, when he comes back from his injury, which he actually plays Arizona his first game. When he comes back from his injury, if we miss the playoffs because he starts turning the ball over again, I could see us moving on from Daniel Jones. And like I said, the only other way, I believe, is if Joe Judge says, look, I inherited this guy, and I want to look elsewhere. So let me know what you think. Put your comments below, and you guys have a good time. And if I don't make a video before then, you guys have a Merry Christmas. Thanks for watching. Dialing It Down with Dave.